Hello my beautiful watchers, storytime. In June 2020, some guy called Chuck Tingle responded to me on Twitter and suddenly all of my followers were really happy and excited for me. To alleviate my confusion, I googled this gentleman and... well, that was an interesting afternoon. Yes, it turns out I was living in ignorance of one of the most beloved figures in LGBTQ erotica circles. Just in case you have been too, let me tell you a little bit about the guy. Chuck Tingle is a self-published author who's gained widespread renown for his absolutely bizarre and hilarious titles and covers. Known works include Space Raptor Butt Invasion, My Billionaire Triceratops Craves Gay Ass, Pressed in the Butt by My Inclusive Holiday Coffee Cups, Quietly Pounded in the Butt by ASMR, double featured by the Sentient Bisexual Movie Theaters, I Went on the Hunt for the Easter Bigfoot and Now He's Eating My Ass, Helicopter Man Pounds Dinosaur Billionaire Ass, The Butt Pounder of the Opera, Pounded by the Handsome Living Song That Has Been Stuck in My Head, The Bisexual Snowman's Carrot Wiener Is in My Butthole, and Pounded by the Pound, Turned Gay by the Socioeconomic Implications of Britain Leaving the European Union. Tingle often refers to these stories as tinglers and has affectionately dubbed his fans buckaroos. Nicknames for followers are fun and good. I'm going to be referring to his work as books, though that is a bit of a generous designation. The average Tingler is about the length of a single chapter of a regular novel. They exist almost exclusively in ebook form, though you can buy compilations in paperback. As I discovered when I delved into the world of COVID-19 themed romance, this sort of thing isn't at all uncommon in erotica. There's a thriving literary economy based around cranking out 30 self-published short stories a year. As a YouTuber, I feel a certain kinship with this business model. Despite common belief, Tingle didn't invent most of the fetishes he writes about, though he did set himself apart from other authors in the genre, partly with his insane titles and partly by being incredibly inclusive of minority races, sexualities, gender identities, and body types. My friend Rantasmo has gone into this in a little more depth, so be sure to check out his video for more information. Very little personal information is known for certain about this guy, as he maintains an extremely high level of anonymity and his own personal accounts of his life are often fantastical, contradictory, or just plain disprovable. For example, he claims to hold a PhD in holistic massage and often refers to himself as Dr. Tingle, but the university he stated he attended offers no such degree. Some of his more believable claims include his first name actually being Chuck, almost being a Taekwondo black belt, being on the autism spectrum, and his son being his editor. The editor of his comedic fetish erotica. I must confess that is not a father-son business venture I would have envisioned before now, but more power to them, I guess. Tingle has quite a substantial following beyond just fans of his book, due to his vocal support of the LGBTQ community and his hard stance against hate groups. In 2016, a subsection of the alt-right attempted to troll the Hugo Awards by organizing a vote campaign that drove one of his weird titles to the finals. Tingle vehemently condemned this group and promised that if he won, he would ask Zoe Quinn, one of the victims of the Gamergate bullshittery, to accept his award for him. He turned this and a subsequent Hugo loss into subjects for his books, because of course he did. When J.K. Rowling revealed that she was more into the turf than the surf, Tingle responded with a full-length parody of Harry Potter starring a trans hero. He also opposed the Tangerine Menace during his farcical presidency, mocking him constantly with parody fact-checking websites and making him a key player in several of his satirical fetish erotica. So throughout this Tingle enlightenment I experienced, a question kept occurring to me over and over again that no one seemed to be addressing. Chuck Tingle is a pretty cool guy, Chuck Tingle is great at titles and covers, but are his books actually any good? Is Chuck Tingle a good writer? Now, I feel the need to immediately qualify this. I am aware that it doesn't matter. His books make people happy, even if they've not read them, which is quite an achievement. His inclusivity means a lot to people, and his general behavior, be it the amusingly bizarre or the unashamedly progressive, matters more in this crazy world we're living in than if he can rock a good 3-act structure. It's cheesy to say, but Tingle has somewhat transcended simply being an author to being an icon, so the question of whether or not he's actually good at writing is fairly inconsequential. But fuck it, I don't have anything good on tonight, so let's address it anyway. In search of an answer, I read more individual books than I have ever read for a single project before. Tingle has over 350 to his name, and as I said, they're all really short, so you have to read a decent amount of them to get a feel for his writing style. Here's a quick rundown of my top picks. Pounded in the Butt by My Own Butt. Some years ago, a scientist invented a way to clone a mindless worker drone replication of himself and started some sort of isolated island nation. His research is obviously highly controversial and mostly secret, but Kirk and a small group of scientists are attempting to replicate his his work by combining tissue samples from various parts of their bodies with animal DNA and cooking up instaclones. Their first success comes when they combine Kirk's brain, butt, and an eagle, resulting in a flying sapient pair of buttocks with all his memories and intelligence. To welcome him to life, Kirk takes him out to dinner, and in what appears to be an extreme act of narcissism, they immediately fall for each other and return to his apartment to have sex. The next morning, Kirk briefly believes that his clone Butt has loved him and left him, as that's his own MO, but it turns out he decided to remain with him and give a relationship a try. I have to admit, I was surprised by the amount of world building that Tingle squeezed into this tiny-ass story. He managed to work in a whole backstory around the creation of clones and the ethical debates that sprang up from it before getting into the anal sex. My librarian is a beautiful lesbian ice cream clone, and she tastes amazing. A young woman named Sally is annoyed that her local library has cranked the AC to an uncomfortably low temperature, but immediately regrets complaining when she finds out it's to accommodate a very attractive female living ice cream cone called Drenda, who's just started working there. They hit it off, and Sally discovers that the cold actually results in her being significantly more efficient in her work, but alas, Drenda is fired after too many people bitch about it. Sally tracks her down and offers to try to help her get her job back. Then things get super meta. Drenda reveals that she is aware that they are characters in a book and is in possession of a copy of said book, referencing Chuck Tingle by name. She decides that getting her job back is secondary to getting this book into a library someday, either in the real world or their one, so their best option is to have really amazing sex and hope that that helps the book sell well. So they do. I don't personally care for meta storytelling or humor, but I did look up the cold efficiency thing, which was mentioned to be a real phenomenon. I suspect that was Chuck's real intention, so he wins this round. Moby Butt. As the name implies, this is a parody of Moby Dick, but with the delightful twist that the whale is a giant aquatic butt and Captain Amber, i.e. Ahab, is her lesbian lover. 7 years prior to the start of the tale, they had begun a sexy game of cat and mouse that got way out of hand as the butt wouldn't let herself get caught and the captain had become too obsessed with winning and justifying the whole terrible ordeal to use the pre-agreed upon safe word that would have ended it immediately. After some teasing from the butt and a lot of frantic chasing, the crew of Amber's ship is on the verge of mutiny and a massive storm is raging overhead. The ship is badly damaged and her last-ditch attempt to capture the butt fails. In an act of madness, Captain Amber dives overboard to swim after her. Seconds from drowning, she realizes how silly she's being and calls out the safe word, so the butt turns around to rescue her and her ship. Amber passes out, comes to on a deserted island, and has sex with her massive sea butt. There were enough references and quotes in this for there to be a distinct possibility that Chuck Tingle actually read all of Moby Dick so he could make this one chapter long erotic parody. Even though he went about it in a very silly way and hammered it home without a shred of subtlety, there was a pretty good moral in this about not letting embarrassment or any other reason stop you from using a safe word if you want out from something with your partner. Gay T-Rex law firm Executive Boner. Donnie, a law graduate struggling to find work in the poor job market, takes a secretarial position in a law firm run by human-sized, intelligent T-Rexes. After a disastrous first day, his boss reveals that they were working him extra hard to test his resolve, then offers him a contract to have sex with a room full of senior partners in exchange for $10 million. He signs it believing it to be a joke, but discovers it was entirely serious, so decides to follow through and is gangbanged by half a dozen dinosaurs. This book surprised me a little because I thought that Tingle was known for being steadfast on themes of positive consent, and this played very near to that line because while Donnie ended up enjoying the experience, he still didn't sign the contract fully aware of its seriousness and insisted that he was heterosexual several times. Sentient bisexual ketchup and mustard, get me off. Lindsay is a young go-getter moving up the corporate ladder at her office job. Her boss discovers she is a big fan of the baseball team the Lobsters and gives her a box ticket to an upcoming game. The other occupant of the box turns out to be a celebrity bottle of ketchup that Lindsay's been crushing on, and what do you know? She just happens to have a big hot dog that's in dire need of what he can give her, if you know what I mean. That's not a metaphor, so yeah, you probably do know what I mean. Celebrity or no, Lindsay's sexual need are only met when a beautiful mustard woman joins them for a bisexual condiment three-way. This one was pretty entertaining. In addition to the treasure trove of food puns, the book also had some surprisingly quotable lines, like lightning rod of sexual conduction. Two things surprised me about Chuck's work. The first is that while his books derive humor from the internet's strangest genuine fetishes, they do not appear to be mocking them. The absurdity of the beings that people have sex with is obviously not played straight, but the characters in the stories are never made the butt of the joke or judged for feeling sexual attraction to them. Related, the humor in the sex scenes is intentional, but they're not just played for laughs. Tingle clearly put his all into making sex with a lesbian ice cream cone as arousing as possible. In the event that absurdist pornography is your jam, you could probably get your jollies from this. Every book felt a little rushed. Like I mentioned, Tingle managed to squeeze a lot of good moments into them, but it was undeniably a squeeze. I understand each concept has limited legs, and there has to be an extremely high turnover to fit the business model, but I don't know, I think they could have just been a little bit longer, just a little bit. There's also recurring issues with inconsistency regarding the physical abilities of the weird sexual partners. Hands and mouths are either not mentioned or are confirmed missing, but whenever these sex scenes start, things are described that definitely require the use of fingers and tongues. I don't know, I just think it's a missed opportunity to get creative regarding how sex would work without human bodies. The word coo comes up in almost every installment, and it's close enough to the word murmur to upset me. This might be different in some of Tingle's many other books, but I noticed in every selection that I read, the POV is always the regular human. I would quite like to see some stories told from the perspective of an affluent, gay, horny dinosaur at some point. There was way more variety in these stories than I would have thought possible. Each brought a little something different to the table before having sex on it. Pounded in the Butt had its world building, the Librarian Ice Cream went meta, Moby Butt was a one-for-one parody. They all did something unique, which is quite impressive. Tingle could easily have gotten away with coasting by on the clickbait value of his title and covers and either put out the same plot over and over again with different creatures copy-pasted into it, or written his stories to be bad on purpose like Sharknado or something, but he didn't. He clearly put a lot of work into these silly books. So all in all, I think the answer to my question is, yeah, Dr. Tingle is a pretty good writer. I think if he chose to, he could write something longer or more grounded, but if this is what he enjoys creating and people enjoy reading them, then fuck it, this is a perfectly good use for his talents. Thank you for joining me, my beautiful watchers. Don't forget to pound the like button and you know, I can't finish that sentence, but please don't forget to do all of those good YouTube channel helping things and take care of yourselves out there.
Dominic joins forces with Kate Robinson and Il Nej to read through Chuck Tingle's extensive back catalog, to see if there could be more to this author than just a bunch of gay, horny shitposting. The plan was to read 25 books, the work divided evenly among the three nerds. In the end, they read 85 books in the span of 2 weeks. Kate read 5 and then ran out of Audible credits. Il Nej read 29, then got bored. Dominic read the other 51!
Much love and appreciation to my patrons of honor, Shelby Holtz, Atel Spurdloff, and Trace Carter. Shout out to Il Nej for the credits music, check out his channel for more parody and original songs, and a huge thank you to this video's co-producer, Kate Robinson. She does some awesome work on her channel, so be sure to check that out too. Though you can buy oh no, that's a word I have trouble saying. Compilations? Though you can buy compilations in paperback. Did I get it right?
Compilation.
That's the American pronunciation. Give me the British.
Compilation.
Compilation. Oh, that makes so much more sense.